you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diver Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week on the podcast, the wreck of the cruiser HMS Hawk, sunk by German submarine U-9 early in World War I with the loss of 524 officers and crew, appears to have been discovered off Scotland's northeast coast by the Lost in Waters Deep wreck researchers and the Gasparado's technical dive team, and the Sydney diving community is in shock after the local divers came across a gruesome discovery on Friday night. So the first news story is that divers are waiting for the Royal Navy to officially confirm a shipwreck's identity from their footage. They believe that it's HMS Hawk, and it was one of the earliest British warships to be sunk in World War I, about 10 weeks into the conflict, so this is a very important find. The Hawk went down in fewer than 8 minutes after being struck by a single torpedo on the 15th of October 1914 whilst on patrol in the North Sea out from Aberdeen. Following an exhaustive research led by Stromness-based wreck hunter Kevin Heath of Lost in Waters Deep, the wreck was pinpointed from the Halton Charters diving support vessel Clasina at a depth of 110 metres, about 70 miles east of Fraserburgh. Heath had combed the records of all other British ships with which Hawk might have communicated with before the sinking, as well as the U-9's logbooks, which helped give an idea of where the Hawk might have been when the torpedo was fired. The team initially checked out an obstruction that had been reported by fishers in the 1980s and found that there was nothing of interest there, but the wreck of the Hawk turned out to lie only about half a mile away from that reporting. The dive team dropped onto the site on the 11th of August and reported being surprised by the good condition of the wreck, though the bow had been damaged when it struck the seabed. The ship lay on its starboard side with minimal marine growth on its surfaces. Hawk carried two 234mm and 10 152mm guns, plus 12 6-pounders and 4 3-pounders, along with 4 457mm torpedo tubes. The guns were described as many and pristine, with some even appearing to remain reflective in places. Bridge apparatus remained in place as well, as did the captain's walkway at the stern and remains of the teak decks. Many of the intact portholes lay open, reflecting the sudden nature of the sinking, with the rooms inside revealing large amounts of Royal Navy crockery. Hawk was an 118-metre long Edgar-class protected cruiser featuring reinforced armour, driven by a pair of 3-cylinder triple-expansion engines. She had been commissioned in 1893 at the Chatham Dockyard, going on to serve in the Mediterranean Fleet and the International Squadron. In 1907, Hawk joined the Home Fleet, and in September 1911, she smashed her bow in a collision in the Solent with Titanic's sister ship, the liner RMS Olympic, which sustained considerable hull damage, though no blame was attached to the naval vessel's captain for the incident. Hawk's original inverted bow was crushed by the impact with the Olympic's hull and was replaced by a straight bow. At the start of World War I, the HMS Hawk joined the 10th Cruiser Squadron, taking part in blockade duties between the Shetland Islands and Norway. In October 1914, the squadron was deployed further south in the North Sea to protect a Canadian troop convoy from German attack. The cruiser had stopped to pick up mail from the Endymion before moving on, without zigzagging to regain her station. She was still out of sight of the rest of the squadron when the U-9 launched its deadly attack at 10:30 p.m. When Hawk was reported missing, the destroyer Swift was sent from Scapa Flow to find her, but came across only 22 crew members on a raft. A Norwegian steamer had meanwhile picked up 49 more men, and one survivor died of his injuries, leaving a total of 70 survivors. The HMS Hawk story is going to be posted on the Lost in Waters Deep website, where many other such shipwreck stories can be found. The dive team like to share the details of their expeditions at their annual technical diving conference, GUZ.org, Tech. The next one is due to take place at the University of Plymouth on the 30th of November, and you can book a ticket if you're interested for £30. French diver Paul-Henri Nargeolet had more dives to the Titanic than any other human, so many so that he was actually known as Mr. Titanic. So when he and 4 other crew died on board the experimental Titan submersible last year, there was some surprise that with his level of experience he had undertaken to act as navigator on OceanGate's tourist trip to the deep-lying wreck. Now, the Nargeolet family are claiming that OceanGate and its late founder and CEO Richard Stockton Rush, who was piloting the carbon fiber vessel when it disappeared on the 18th of June 2023, had deliberately misled the former naval commander to believe that Titan was safer than it actually was. They also say that contrary to earlier reports that the occupants would have known nothing when Titan imploded, they would in fact have had prior warning of impending danger and suffered from, quote, mental anguish in their last moments. The family have now launched a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit against Rush, OceanGate, and other entities involved in developing Titan, requesting that the circumstances of the fatal incident be considered before a jury. Just recapping the story, the Titan lost contact with its support ship 2 hours after leaving the surface, and a highly publicized deep-sea search and rescue mission continued for 4 days before the wreckage was found less than 300 meters from Titanic's bow at a depth of 3.8 kilometers. In the lawsuit, the family claimed that Rush had seemed to take pride in flouting industry standards, actively cultivating an image of himself as, quote, a maverick genius of the deep-sea diving world. In the past, he had criticized US passenger vessel safety legislation because it, quote, needlessly prioritized passenger safety over commercial innovation. His approach was allegedly typified by use of a cheap Logitech video game controller to pilot the Titan. The, quote, hip contemporary wireless electronic systems used, unlike those of any previous submersible, relied on the power source remaining uninterrupted, according to the family. The lawsuit was filed on the 13th of August at the Superior Court in Washington for King County. OceanGate was based in Washington before suspending all of its operations following the disaster. The plaintiffs state the catastrophic implosion that claimed Nargeolet's life was due directly to the persistent carelessness, recklessness, and negligence of OceanGate, Rush, and other defendants in their design, construction, and operation of Titan. Nargeolet may have died doing what he loved to do, but his death and the deaths of the other Titan crew members was wrongful. We have alleged in the lawsuit that had Stockton Rush been transparent about all the troubles that had been experienced with the Titan as well as the previous similar models, someone as experienced and knowledgeable as P.H. Nargeolet would not have participated. That's according to Matt Schaefer, a lawyer representing the family. Another of the legal team, Tony Busby, stated, "I think it's telling that even though the University of Washington and Boeing had key roles in the design of previous but similar versions of the Titan, both have recently disclaimed any involvements at all in the submersible model that imploded." Up until now, deep-sea submersibles had generally enjoyed a good safety record, but they're usually made from solid titanium rather than titanium attached to a lightweight carbon fiber body, which was used in the Titan. Some experts and potential passengers had publicly criticized the submersible's design, but their objections had been dismissed by Rush as he sought to persuade deep-sea tourists to pay up to $250,000 to visit the Titanic site. He's said to have claimed to have fitted an advanced acoustic safety system that would warn Titan's occupants should the hull be cracking under pressure, but a mechanism designed to drop ballast and bring Titan back up in an emergency is said to have failed. Quoting, "By experts' reckoning, they would have continued to descend in full knowledge of the vessel's irreversible failures, experiencing terror and mental anguish prior to the Titan ultimately imploding," according to the lawsuit. Cited alongside OceanGate and Rush as defendants are the company's former director of engineering Tony Nissen, the Hydrospace Group, Janicki Industries, and Electro Impact companies who are said to have been involved in designing and manufacturing the Titan. In Sydney, Australia, local divers discovered 2 resident bull rays at Chowder Bay in Mossman with their wings cut off. The divers were confronted by a horrific scene of, quote, barbaric cruelty. The bull rays, both well known to divers at Chowder Bay, were aged at least 20 years old, and they believe that they were targeted by fishermen on Friday night, then mutilated and thrown off the jetty. Chowder Bay Jetty is a very popular fishing area as well as dive site, and the Friends of Chowder Bay Facebook group co-founder Jane Jenkins said that, quote, the 2 rays were very much part of our underwater world, and it honestly feels like we've lost family members. The local diving community is devastated by the senseless violence. The largest ray was over 3 meters long and weighed around 250 kilograms, believed to have been lured by chicken bait, which was also found on the seabed, then hooked and brought to the surface to go through the act of having its wings cut off. One man alone could not perform a task like this. It must have been a coordinated effort with several accomplices. We believe both rays were cut up while still alive and then just thrown back in the water to die. These people must have used a large vehicle to transport their catch, but no one seems to have witnessed anything. They were very tame creatures who would often swim up to say hello and scavenge off the ocean floor, cleaning up dumped fishing bait. I'm appalled and sickened by the suffering that they endured. Chowder Bay is a special area and home to the Seahorse Hotels, the largest breeding area in the world for the threatened species of White's seahorses. They are proud of the area, and it's so sad that this can happen. We are now trying to get all rays in New South Wales protected so that this act of cruelty cannot happen again. That's just sad news. I saw something similar when I was diving in Madagascar. You just see sharks with their fins cut off, and you just get that like level of hopelessness as you're like there in the moment. And you're like, oh well, if only there was something that I could have done, but it's far too late at this point. And especially if they're like local celebrities, because you do get certain, if you dive a certain dive site frequently enough, you do get these kind of like local species that you get to know. So yeah, it must have been quite distressing for them to first see it, and then of course you've got to document it. A tiny statuette of a woman found by divers in Italy's Lake Bolsena has turned out to date back some 3,000 years to the First Iron Age, and it still bears the fingerprints of its creator. The divers from the Underwater Archaeology Service of the Superintendents of Archaeology, Fine Arts and Landscapes, Southern Etruria, had been working to create an underwater trail to help visitors explore a submerged archaeological site at Gran Caro. The crude 15cm long terracotta figurine, dated to the period between the late 10th and early 9th centuries BC, was described by the superintendents as an exceptional discovery. The archaeologists state that it was made of freshly baked clay and still shows the marks of the fingerprints of the modeler and the imprint of a piece of fabric under the chest, an indication that it was intended to be dressed in a garment. The figurine, found in what had been a residential area of an ancient settlement, is thought to have been a votive ornament related to some kind of household religious ritual, perhaps made to accompany a person to their grave. Similar figures from later periods of prehistory have suggested a tradition of making such figurines in central Italy. Bolsena, in the Lazio region of the border of Tuscany and Umbria, is Europe's largest volcanic lake and is known for its very clear waters. The Gran Caro settlement is thought to have continued to be occupied until the last days of the Roman Empire, when it succumbed to the effects of the erupting Volsini volcano. So yeah, a very cool little find. Obviously they're archaeological divers, so they're looking for these kind of things, but yeah, sometimes you just get average Joe diver who's just like cruising around a pretty popular dive site, and you see something that is an unusual shaped rock, when actually it's a piece of history. So yeah, a pretty cool story there. And fears are being expressed in Cornwall about the impending sale of the Shipwreck Treasure Museum in Charleston, a property containing a historic collection of maritime and shipwreck memorabilia that includes many amateur scuba diver finds from over the years. There are now concerns that it might not prove possible to sell the museum as a growing concern, in which case the unique collection could be broken up. Local historian Elizabeth Dale told the BBC that, quote, "It's sad for Charleston on a local level, but it's sad for Cornwall as a whole because we're losing a wonderful museum," adding that whatever happens, maritime artifacts donated by local groups and families should not be sold off. The museum is housed in the Merchants of Charleston building overlooking historic Charleston Harbour in St Austell and contains some 7,000 items on display or in storage, all of them included in the £1.95 million asking price for the freehold of the property. Some of the exhibits have come from celebrated shipwrecks including the Mary Rose, the Titanic, Lithuania and the Royal Charter, and as might be expected, everything is said to have been declared to the receiver of the wreck or was covered by the 2002 National Wreck Amnesty. An extensive complex of tunnels connects the different parts of the museum to one another. The price includes the current Shackleton's Legacy exhibition, co-produced with the Royal Geographic Society. There's also a 100-cover bar restaurant, shops and ice cream cafe takeaway, and a buyer wishing to keep the museum going could call on the services of the existing full-time staff of 4. The museum was established almost 50 years ago and for the past 9 years has been owned by Sir Tim Smith, co-founder of the Eden Project and owner of the Lost Gardens of Heiligen, who is currently in the process of consolidating his corporate activities. Smith is known to have made contingency plans in case it proves impossible to sell the museum, and contents as well are a growing concern. He intends to auction off the shipwreck memorabilia separately if it comes to that in November. That's according to Cornwall Live. The estate agent handling the sale is SBC Property of Truro, if you're interested. In the meantime, the Shipwreck Treasure Museum does remain open for business daily from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Admission, not including the Shackleton's Legacy exhibit, costs £8.50 or £5 for under 18s. So if you are in Cornwall, then it is worth a visit. New dive equipment. I don't think I saw anything new this week. No, it's again another quiet week. So let's jump into some questions. Broaden, I'm going to say, asks, most important question, are they positive, negative, or neutrally buoyant on the new Apex RK4 fins? I don't know at the moment. I'm still waiting for a sample. They said that I could have one of their, not even like demo samples, but it was like a concept design. It looks the real deal. It's got all the features and it looks like the real thing. However, it's made from a different material, so it's going to be a little bit softer. So of course I didn't want it, unfortunately. I wanted the real thing so that I could test the buoyancy to see whether they're neutrally buoyant or not. We'll see as soon as they can get some off the production line. Rancid's Channel 3206 says, I went for a pre-dive just in shallow water just to see if I liked it. Now halfway through PADI open water, on my pre-dive the regulator breathed quite easily, whereas on my first PADI pool dive there was a more pronounced effort to breathe from the regulator. How hard are they to set up specifically to your preference? Is that something to request or that you can adjust as a preference when having a regulator serviced? It's technically not that difficult. However, if you don't know what you're doing, you can make a mess of your regulators. So I mean, if you have a regulator with a dial of breath, a little breathing adjustment knob on the side, it's very easy. You can do it as and when you like. Without one, it's just like the turn of either it's not really a screwdriver. It's a special tool that you put between the hose and the second stage. Some actually have a hex-shaped one, but yeah, it's pretty easy to adjust. Not yourself. It's something that you ask your service technician to do. When I used to work at a service centre, someone would come in, bring their regulators in for a service. After it's been done, when they come to collect them, we'd hook them up to a cylinder and say, there you go, give them a breathe, see how they feel, and then they go, oh yeah, that's perfect, or oh actually, could you like stiffen it or lighten it up a little bit? There is a little bit of leeway. You don't want to make it too light because then it will just free flow in an instant. Too stiff and it increases your work of breathing, which of course you don't want. So yeah, ideally you want something with a dial of breath on the side and a Venturi switch as well. Yeah, it could just be the regulators were set up a bit more stiff to try and reduce the chance of a free flow from for students. Mr. Moose 6765 says, does this mean my dive computer will sway my analog compass? Yes. That would explain a lot when I did my open water. I think I'm just terrible going in a straight line though. No, so yeah, anything with a battery is going to too close, in close proximity to your compass, is going to set it off. So yeah, and vice versa. If you've got a compass set to your or a digital compass in your dive computer, you want to calibrate that like in the middle of a field with nothing around you, nothing magnetic, that is. Because yeah, if you do it like on your wrist next to your wrist compass, then of course it's going to pick up the magnetic needle on that and sway the compass. So yeah, they really do need to be fairly far away from one another. The Jamie Caldwell, when talking about the dry suit hose, what about routing left versus right? Concerns about routing over dry suit front zippers? No, I've never had an issue routing my my dry suit inflator hose over the front zipper. Most zippers tend to have either a second zipper over the top of it, or like a flap of material to protect the dry suit zipper, and of course protect the hose over the top of it. But if you want to route it on the right hand side, if you really want to, the only issue is if that you lose your regulator and you do like the tilt and sweep method, you might find that that hose and like waste valuable seconds going, oh no, that's actually my dry suit hose. Whereas a lot of divers prefer to have all of their regulators on the right and everything else on the left, basically. So all of my inflators are on the left hand side, all of my regulator hoses are on the right hand side, so it's a lot easier to distinguish what I can breathe from and what I can control my buoyancy from. I'm sorry if I butcher your name. I'm going to say Adef Rutos 63 asks, if you deflate the dry suit on your ascent, don't you lose insulation? A safety stop would be a bit chilly, wouldn't it? No, you don't lose that much gas. It's only the small blasts of gas that you use to compensate for compression as you descend. Yes, it is insulating gas. Yes, it is going to be warmer than the surrounding water, but I've never like done a safety stop and then suddenly gone, ooh, I'm suddenly all cold all of a sudden. You still have a layer of insulating air all over you, so it's not that much of an issue. If anything, because you're coming up through the water column, you're ascending into warmer waters, which is much nicer. I remember one dive where it was only like an 18-meter dive or something, but there was a thermocline, and you descend into it and you go, oh my god, it's suddenly cold. But on the reverse, as you're ascending, it was like just swimming into a warm bath. You're like, wow, it's glorious and warm because you've acclimatized to that colder temperature. No, I can't say I've ever noticed a sudden drop in temperature after my auto shoulder dump has purged. Cryonics 77. As I know the Sunto Ocean can pair with 5 transmitters, then how about the transmitter? Can one transmitter pair with multiple dive computers? Which one? So it's a Sunto tank pod. That's not. You don't type in the serial number on those, do you? You just kind of you just pair it at the start. Theoretically, I imagine if you had several dive computers set up to receive all at the same time when you pressurize the tank pod, you probably could. it wouldn't be that useful. I don't know the range on the tank pod. Most transmitters only have a range of like 1, maybe 2 meters. So it's not going to be that useful unless your backup computer, you're running 2 computers, one on each wrist. That wouldn't be so much of an issue. I imagine so. I mean, that's a question for Sunto. Ask them. Rancid's channel again, 3206. You mentioned rope signals. As I'm helping topside, also rope signals have been mentioned to me. Do you have a video or a link to rope signals, please? No, I was planning on doing one, but just other videos kind of got in the way and I just haven't got around to it. Yeah, rope signals, you might find some more like local specific like signals diving in certain areas, but yeah, I remember because I did the first part of the HSE diving course. You have to have a tether, like an umbilical, and you can communicate through that using bells and pulls on the rope. So you always have a tender, someone on the surface holding onto that line. You've got the diver, it's attached to your harness. So you're always in like physical communication. And when someone moves the rope, you can kind of tell the difference between just moving around because I need to reach something and I need a bit more slack, and when someone's physically pulling, because there are 2 ways to communicate on the rope. You have bells and you have pulls. So a bell is literally, if you're just like ringing a bell, you grab hold of the little bit of rope and you just kind of ding it. It's just a short, sharp ding, and they're always done in pairs. So if you have to do 4 bells, it's bell, 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 bell. That's 4 bells. Otherwise, if you do it 2 quick together, the signal can get a little bit confusing. A pull, on the other hand, is a long, forceful, like outstretch your arm, grab hold of the rope, and then pull it across your chest and take a good second or 2. So it's pull, and then depending on like who started it. I mean, 1 pull is usually your like, okay, like pay attention, wake up kind of signal. So if I'm tending, I'm on the surface and I want my diver to do something, I'll give him 1 pull and then just stop. The diver will feel that. Sometimes it will like literally pull you off of what you're doing if you don't have enough slack in that line. So you always want a little bit of slack. You register that as the diver and you give them a pull back. You always like reply what you've heard just to confirm it, and then you'll give them like 2 bells means to go out away from the like jack stay, or usually you descend down a line, and that's like your center of like where you're working. And yeah, if you get 2 bells, it says to go away basically. 3 bells means to go right. So if you're out on a line, you basically turn and face your jack stay, and if you get those 3 bells, then you face the shot and you go to your right. 4 bells means to go to your left, and 5 bells means to come back. And it's a good way of like organizing search patterns and things. We certainly did a lot of like search patterns, and yeah, it takes a while to learn it because it's different from the tender to the diver and from the diver to the attendant. They're similar, but yeah, you basically have 2 levels of like communications backwards and forwards. And when you're actually communicating, it's not a quick thing because you're repeating every command and everything's slow and deliberate. So you'll get that initial pull, and then you wait for them to reply with a single pull. You're like, oh, okay, they're paying attention. And then you do your bells or your pulls or whatever the communication is, and then you reply with the same thing, and then they do it. So it's quite a slow way of communicating, but it doesn't rely on any electronics. It ensures that you're physically tethered to one another. There is a case if you're diving somewhere with current, when you're tending, you feel like resistance, and you think that it's the diver pulling to like reach something, and they need a bit more slack, so you pay out a bit more slack, and you still feel that tension in the line, so you pay out a bit more, when actually it's just the water currents just pulling on the line, so you end up with all this excess like rope in the water that's just going to tangle up in something. So it is important to be able to feel that kind of difference. But yeah, I'd at least get it like printed out, especially if you're going to be a tender. Get something laminated, because the bells and the pulls, yeah, if you don't use them, they go out of your head pretty quick. So you do need to brush up on them, and yeah, it is just something handy. If you are using surface tending, then yeah, I'd have something like written down on a slate or wet notes, just so that you have all of the different like communications written out that you can refer to if you're ever confused. But yeah, it is a pretty cool way of communicating, and yeah, I'll see if I can drop a video about it. Otherwise, that's it for another week. Thank you for listening, everybody. Remember to check out our magazine on our website, scubadivingmag.com. Check out the things that we do on the website. Head over to the YouTube channel as well and subscribe there if you're new. Remember to like, share, subscribe, 5-star, whatever it is, on whatever channel you're listening to this podcast on. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. And of course, safe diving.